Her name was Amara, and she was known as a woman who took life very seriously. Every day, she woke up early and prepared for work with great care because she believed that success did not come by luck, but by discipline. She worked as a general manager in a large company, a position that came with heavy responsibility. Many people worked under her, and she was the one who made final decisions. Because of this, her voice carried weight, and her presence alone could silence a noisy room. At the office, Amara was respected for her intelligence and hard work. She understood numbers, people, and systems very well, and the company had grown stronger under her leadership. However, she was not the kind of manager who joked with workers or shared personal stories. She kept a clear line between herself and others because she believed that authority should be protected. Some workers admired her strength, while others felt she was too strict, but everyone agreed that she was not someone to be taken lightly. What most people did not know was that Amara had not always been this hard and guarded. Years earlier, she had been a softer and more trusting person. During that time, she experienced a painful moment that changed how she saw the world. A man once embarrassed her in public, making her feel small and powerless, while people watched and said nothing. That moment stayed in her heart for a long time, and from that day on, she promised herself that she would never allow anyone to treat her with disrespect again. Because of that promise, Amara became very alert to how people behaved around her. Any action that felt like disrespect or humiliation, even if small, quickly stirred anger inside her. She believed that reacting fast was the only way to protect her dignity. Over time, this way of living made her strong on the outside but tired on the inside, as she carried old pain without giving herself time to heal. One evening, after a long and stressful week at work filled with meetings, phone calls, and difficult decisions, Amara felt completely worn out. Her head was heavy, and all she wanted was to go home and rest. On her way from the office, she remembered that she needed to buy food for the weekend, so she decided to stop by the market. It was not something special, just a normal part of her routine, and she did not expect anything unusual to happen. As she locked her office door and walked out into the evening air, Amara had no idea that this simple decision to pass through the market would lead her into a moment that would challenge everything she believed about respect, kindness, and judgment. Without knowing it, she was walking straight toward the beginning of a life-changing encounter. Amara arrived at the market just as the evening rush was beginning. The place was full of life and noise, with people moving in all directions at the same time. Traders were calling out the prices of their goods, trying to attract customers before night fell. Some were selling fruits and vegetables, others were arranging clothes, and some were counting money quickly with tired hands. The smell of fresh food mixed with dust and smoke from nearby cooking fires, filling the air with the familiar feeling of a busy market. Amara arrived at the market just as the evening rush was beginning. The place was full of life and noise, with people moving in all directions at the same time. Traders were calling out the prices of their goods, trying to attract customers before night fell. Some were selling fruits and vegetables, others were arranging clothes, and some were counting money quickly with tired hands. The smell of fresh food mixed with dust and smoke from nearby cooking fires, filling the air with the familiar feeling of a busy market. Amara walked carefully through the narrow paths between the stalls, holding her bag close to her body. She was not relaxed because crowded places always made her alert. People brushed past her shoulders without saying sorry, children ran between adults, and voices rose and fell all around her. She reminded herself to stay calm and focus only on what she came to buy so that she could leave as soon as possible. At the same time, not far from her, a man was also moving slowly through the market. He looked very ordinary, like any other man who had come to buy food for the evening. He wore simple clothes that did not attract attention, and there was nothing about him that showed wealth or power. No one followed him, and no one treated him specially. To everyone around him, he was just another face in the crowd. The man liked the market because it reminded him of real life. He enjoyed watching people bargain, laugh, and struggle through their daily routines. He believed that staying close to ordinary people helped him understand the world better. As he walked, he noticed small things that others ignored, like a child about to be pushed by the crowd or an old woman struggling to lift her basket. As Amara moved from one stall to another, her mind was still full of work thoughts. She was thinking about reports, staff issues, and deadlines she had to meet the following week. Because of this, she was not fully paying attention to her surroundings. She stepped forward quickly, not noticing how close she was to a busy corner where people were pushing to pass through. In that moment of confusion and movement, something small but important happened. Amara lost her balance slightly, and one of the items in her hand shifted dangerously. The man nearby noticed this immediately. Without stopping to think too much, he moved toward her, driven by a simple desire to help before something bad could happen. This quick movement, made with good intentions, was about to bring two strangers together in a way neither of them expected, setting the stage for a misunderstanding that would change both of their lives forever. As Amara stepped forward in the crowded market, the movement around her became more intense. People were pushing from behind, trying to pass through before the path closed again. A vendor shouted loudly, and someone brushed against her arm, making her lose focus for a brief moment. In that short moment, her bag slipped from her grip, and a few items inside shifted as if they were about to fall to the ground. The man who had been walking nearby noticed everything at once. He saw how close Amara was to falling and how the crowd could easily knock her down. Without thinking of himself, he quickly stepped closer and reached out his hand to steady her. His action was gentle and meant only to help her keep her balance and protect her belongings. In his mind, it was a simple thing to do. The kind of small kindness he believed anyone should offer another person in need. However, Amara experienced the moment very differently. She suddenly felt someone touch her without warning, and the sound of the busy market made it hard for her to hear or understand what was happening. People around them slowed down and began to look in their direction, curious about the sudden movement. To Amara, it felt as if all eyes were now on her, just like in the painful memory from her past. Her heart began to beat fast, and her thoughts became clouded by fear and anger. She did not see a man trying to help. Instead, she felt exposed and disrespected. Her mind rushed back to the time when she had been embarrassed in public, and the same feeling of helplessness rose inside her. In that moment, she believed she was being treated badly again, and her promise to never allow such treatment took control of her actions. The man tried to speak, hoping to explain himself, but his words were lost in the noise of the market. He kept his hand raised slightly, showing that he meant no harm, and his face was calm and sincere. To him, the situation was confusing because he could not understand why a simple act of help was being met with such tension. He only wanted to make sure she was safe and then continue on his way. Amara did not give herself time to think or listen. Her emotions had already decided for her. She pulled herself away sharply, her eyes filled with anger and hurt, and her body stiff with defense. The fear of being humiliated again was stronger than reason, and she reacted the only way she knew how to protect herself in that moment. As the space between them grew tense and silent, the crowd began to slow, sensing that something serious was about to happen. The misunderstanding had reached its peak, and what began as a quiet act of kindness was now turning into a moment of public conflict that neither of them had planned or wanted. The moment stretched longer than it should have. The noise of the market, which had been loud and careless just seconds before, slowly faded into the background as people nearby sensed that something serious was happening. Faces turned toward Amara and the man, and feet that had been rushing a moment earlier now slowed down. Even the vendors paused, their hands still holding goods in mid-air, watching closely. Amara's mind was racing, but not in a clear way. Her chest felt tight, and her breath came faster than normal. All she could feel was the heavy weight of her past pressing down on her present. She did not see the man's calm face or his open hand meant to help. Instead, she saw herself from years ago, standing helpless while people watched her be embarrassed. That memory burned inside her, pushing her toward action without thought. Before the man could fully explain himself or step back, Amara raised her hand and slapped him across the face. The sound was sharp and loud, cutting through the air like a sudden crack. For a brief second, everything froze. The slap echoed in the silence, and the shock of it rippled through the crowd. People gasped. Some shouted in surprise, while others murmured angrily. A few women nodded as if they believed Amara had done the right thing, assuming the man must have behaved badly. Others stared at her in disbelief, confused by how quickly the situation had turned violent. Children were pulled closer to their parents, and a few vendors shook their heads quietly. The man staggered slightly from the force of the slap, but he did not fall. He stood still, his hand slowly rising to touch his cheek. His expression was not angry. It was not hateful. It was filled with surprise and sadness. He looked around briefly, taking in the watching crowd, and then returned his gaze to Amara. "I was only trying to help," he said softly. His voice was calm, steady, and free of insult. He did not shout. He did not threaten her. He did not demand an apology. His words confused the people watching because they did not match the anger they expected. Some of the crowd shifted uncomfortably, unsure of who was right anymore. Amara felt a sudden wave of mixed emotions. For a moment, her confidence shook. The man's calm response did not match the picture of an enemy she had built in her mind. Still, pride and fear would not allow her to stay and think. She tightened her grip on her bag, lifted her chin, and turned away without saying a word. As she walked off quickly, her heart pounding, whispers followed her through the crowd. Some people watched her go, others turned their attention back to their stalls, and the market slowly returned to its noisy rhythm. To most people, it was just another dramatic moment in a busy place, something to talk about briefly and then forget. The man remained standing for a moment longer, rubbing his cheek gently. He sighed quietly, not in anger, but in disappointment. Then he picked up what he had come to buy and walked away in the opposite direction, disappearing into the crowd just as simply as he had appeared. Both Amara and the man believed the incident was over. They thought they would never see each other again. Neither of them knew that this single moment in the market had already tied their lives together in a way that could not be undone, and that the next meeting would happen in a place of power, not among market stalls. The next morning, Amara woke up early as usual, but something felt different. Her sleep had been restless, and her mind kept returning to the strange incident at the market. She told herself not to think about it, reminding herself that she had only defended her dignity. Still, the man's calm voice and the look on his face stayed with her in a way she did not like. She pushed the thoughts aside, dressed neatly, and prepared for another demanding day at work. When Amara arrived at the office, she immediately noticed an unusual atmosphere. People were gathered in small groups, speaking in low voices instead of their normal morning chatter. Some stopped talking when she walked past, while others glanced at her with curious expressions. It felt as though everyone was waiting for something important to happen, and this made her uneasy. Shortly after settling into her office, a message came through announcing a mandatory meeting for all senior staff. The message was short and serious, giving no details, which only increased the tension. Amara straightened her jacket, gathered her notes, and headed to the meeting room, assuming it would be another discussion about company performance or future plans. The meeting room was fuller than usual. Board members sat at the front, their faces serious and composed. When everyone was seated, one of the senior directors stood up and cleared his throat. He spoke about the company's growth and success, praising the management team for their hard work. Then his tone changed, and the room grew quiet. He announced that the company had always had a silent owner, someone who preferred to stay out of the spotlight and let the managers run daily operations. That owner, he explained, had decided it was time to step forward and meet the leadership team in person. A wave of surprise moved through the room as people whispered to each other, trying to guess who this mysterious person might be. The door at the side of the room opened slowly. Amara's breath caught in her throat. The man from the market walked in. He was dressed neatly now, but still simply. There was no pride in his walk, no show of power. Yet the room immediately fell silent as he took his place at the front. The directors greeted him with respect, calling him the real owner of the company. Amara felt as if the floor had disappeared beneath her feet. Her heart began to pound loudly in her ears, and her hands grew cold. She stared at the man, hoping she was mistaken, but there was no doubt. It was the same face, the same calm eyes, and the same gentle presence. The man she had slapped in the market was the man who owned everything she managed. Memories of the slap rushed back into her mind, replaying again and again. Shame washed over her, followed by fear. She imagined losing her job, her reputation, and everything she had worked so hard to build. She could not bring herself to look at him directly, afraid that their eyes might meet. The man, however, looked around the room calmly, acknowledging the managers with a small nod. When his eyes briefly passed over Amara, there was no anger in them, only quiet recognition. He did not expose her. He did not react in any way that showed the others what had happened between them. The meeting continued, but Amara barely heard a word. Her thoughts were tangled with worry and regret. By the time the meeting ended, she knew one thing for certain. The incident she believed was over had only just begun, and the consequences of her actions were now standing right in front of her. After the meeting ended, Amara returned to her office, but she was no longer the same woman who had walked in that morning. Her body was present, but her mind was far away. She sat at her desk, staring at her computer screen without seeing the words on it. The room felt smaller and the air felt heavier. Every sound outside her office door made her heart jump because she feared it might be someone calling her to face what she had done. All day, Amara lived in fear. She feared losing her job, feared being exposed in front of her colleagues, and feared that all her years of hard work would be destroyed by one moment of anger. She replayed the market scene again and again in her mind, this time seeing it clearly. She now understood that the man had not meant any harm. The slap, which had once felt like protection, now felt like a deep mistake. What confused her the most was the man's behavior. He did not send for her. He did not call her into his office. He did not treat her badly or speak harshly about her. In meetings, he spoke calmly and wisely, praising good work and asking thoughtful questions. When he passed her in the hallway, he greeted her politely like every other manager. This silence was more painful than punishment because it forced Amara to face her guilt alone. That night, Amara could not sleep. She lay awake thinking about her past, about the promise she had made to herself, and about how that promise had slowly turned into a shield that hurt others. For the first time, she asked herself a hard question. What if not every situation is an attack? This thought made her uncomfortable, but she could not push it away. The following day, she received a message asking her to meet the owner privately. Her hands trembled as she read it. This was the moment she had been dreading. She straightened her clothes, took a deep breath, and walked to his office with slow, careful steps. Each step felt heavier than the last. When she entered, the man stood up and invited her to sit. His voice was calm, and his face showed no anger. This made it even harder for her to speak. For a moment, there was silence between them. Then he gently explained what had truly happened at the market. He told her how he had seen her almost lose her balance and had only wanted to help. He explained that he lived simply because he believed money should never make a person feel bigger than others. Amara could no longer hold herself together. Tears filled her eyes as she apologized sincerely, explaining her past pain and why she reacted the way she did. She admitted that fear had controlled her actions and that she had judged him without listening. The man listened carefully without interrupting, showing her the same kindness she had misunderstood before. When she finished, the man spoke softly. He told her that pain can change people if it is not healed, and that power should never be used to crush others but to help them grow. He made it clear that he would not punish her, but he challenged her to learn from the experience and become a better leader, one who listens before reacting. Amara left the office feeling lighter but deeply changed. She knew that this moment was not just about forgiveness, but about transformation. The fear that had once ruled her was slowly giving way to understanding, and she realized that true strength did not come from quick anger, but from wisdom and humility. After her private meeting with the owner, Amara walked back to her office slowly, as if she were seeing the workplace for the first time. The walls, the desks, and the people moving around all felt familiar, yet something inside her had changed. The heavy fear that had lived in her chest for days was no longer there. In its place was a quiet understanding that stayed with her like a steady voice, reminding her to slow down and think before acting. In the days that followed, Amara began to notice her own behavior more closely. When workers came to her with complaints or mistakes, she listened fully before speaking. She no longer raised her voice quickly or assumed the worst in people. Instead of reacting from anger, she asked questions and tried to understand what was really happening. This change surprised her staff, who began to feel more comfortable around her. The office atmosphere slowly became calmer and more respectful. The man, the true owner of the company, continued to live and work in the same quiet way. He did not use his position to show power or demand special treatment. He visited different departments, spoke kindly to workers, and listened to their ideas. People began to respect him, not because of his wealth, but because of his humility. Many never guessed that he was a billionaire, and he preferred it that way. As time passed, Amara found herself thinking often about the lessons she had learned in the market. She realized that her past pain had taught her to fight quickly, but it had not taught her to heal. She began to understand that protecting her dignity did not mean attacking others first. True dignity, she now believed, came from self-control, patience, and wisdom. This realization helped her let go of the anger she had carried for so long. One afternoon, Amara found the courage to thank the owner again, not just for forgiving her, but for teaching her something important. He smiled gently and told her that life often uses unexpected moments to teach the deepest lessons. He reminded her that kindness and humility are strengths, not weaknesses, and that real power is shown in how we treat others when we have the chance to hurt them but choose not to. Over time, Amara grew into a better leader and a better person. She still worked hard and expected excellence, but she now balanced strength with compassion. The company continued to grow, not just in profit, but in trust and unity among its workers. People felt seen, heard, and valued, and this made them work with greater purpose. The memory of the slap in the market never fully disappeared, but it no longer brought shame alone. Instead, it stood as a reminder of how quickly misunderstandings can happen and how important it is to pause before judging others. What began as a painful mistake became the moment that changed two lives, teaching both Amara and the man that kindness, when met with patience and understanding, can lead to growth and new beginnings. And so, from a crowded market to a quiet office, a simple act of kindness and a harsh misunderstanding came together to create a story not of revenge or pride, but of learning, healing, and becoming better than before.